Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on families and households, looking at the view of the new right on the family. Whilst we look at the new right as a sociological theory, it's more allied to political movements than sociological ones. However, it does draw some of its key influences from the ideas of functionalism, and some refer to the new right as a form of neo-functionalism. The new right grew to prominence in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and is closely linked to the conservative governments of Margaret Thatcher and John Major and the Republican Party led by Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. in the USA. Their ideas remain influential in modern politics, particularly their focus on neoliberal economic policy. They advocate lower state spending and less intervention on the part of the state in people's lives, at least in theory, whilst promoting personal responsibility and traditional values in the family. The new right rose to prominence on the back of a crisis of hegemony in the late 1970s. Their argument was that the progressive policies introduced in the 1960s and early 1970s had left society with less moral fibre and an erosion of traditional values that had made Britain and the USA great. They particularly focused on the role of the family as being part of this decline, citing reforms to divorce laws as a threat to the stability of the family, suggesting that reforms such as increased state spending on lone parent families and policies that allowed women to control when they had children, such as the legalisation of abortion and the availability of the contraceptive pill on prescription, as the reason for the decline in marriage. They also attacked the decriminalisation of male homosexuality as an attack on the nuclear family. They sought to return to a golden age of family life with stable family structures, based upon the idea that a male breadwinner would be able to support his own family, rather than rely upon state support. They also suggested that female-headed families lacked the discipline to ensure that children were socialised into the correct norms and values of society. One of the most prominent New Right thinkers of the time was Charles Murray, a self-confessed libertarian thinker who believed that people should have control over their own lives and not rely upon the state to fund their lifestyle. A staunch critic of the welfare state, Murray believed that over-generous benefits created a state of welfare dependency that discouraged work. He suggested that lone parent families living off benefits had created a generation of idle young men who lacked the discipline that father figures could provide, and that these lone parent families had become the foundations of an underclass, a social group beneath the working class that became a folk devil for those on the right of the political spectrum. This underclass had developed their own norms and values that were in opposition to the rest of society, choosing benefits and out-of-marriage childbearing instead of employment and marriage, and that this resulted in criminal and antisocial behaviours. New right thinking informed much of the social policy that was introduced by the Conservative governments over the last 40 years. In 1993, they introduced the Child Support Agency, a government department responsible for tracking down parents who were not financially supporting children they did not live with. To reinforce traditional values, they introduced tax incentives for married couples, allowing them to pay less tax than if they were unmarried. They also reduced taxation and increased the amounts that families could earn before paying tax, promoting individual responsibility rather than state support. This was done while simultaneously reducing state benefits, removing support for those on housing benefit with additional bedrooms, the bedroom tax, and capping benefits to families and introducing a two-child policy for benefit claims. This led to the controversial rape clause, where women who were impregnated as a result of sexual assault would need to disclose that information if they wanted to claim benefits for additional children. They also extended their policies outside of the family into education and crime, with Section 28, a controversial policy banning the teaching of homosexuality as an alternative to heterosexuality in the 1980s. Their policies on crime and antisocial behaviour led to fines and parenting classes for the parents of young offenders, and in education the introduction of fines for removing children from school from holidays or events both reinforced the idea that parents should be responsible for the behaviour of their children, and particularly targeted parents of lower social classes. The new right was heavily influenced in these policies by neoliberal economics. Various economic crises had left national debt at high levels, and the solution of the new right was to reduce state spending, particularly on state benefits. Neoliberal economics focuses on the idea that people should be able to choose how to spend their money, rather than being taxed heavily and letting the state provide for them. To do this, they dramatically reduced state benefits, arguing that this would create a greater incentive to work, even if that is for lower wages. They argued that work would enable the family to have greater choice over what they chose to spend their money on, and that this would promote greater personal responsibility with a limited safety net to protect them should they struggle. The new right has come under heavy criticism from other sociological perspectives. Feminists have argued that women, particularly those heading lone parent families, are often scapegoated for the problems in society, often caused by the application of neoliberal policies, such as the decline in traditional working class jobs. They argue that it is women who are more likely to end up living in poverty as a result of these cuts, even when they are employed. Other critics of the new right suggest that their focus is too much on promoting economic growth, and they leave charities and individuals to deal with wide-ranging structural problems, such as poverty and healthcare. They also suggest that their focus on traditional values leads to the marginalisation of groups in society, which in turn inflicts more damage on the cohesion of society. That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on families and households, looking at the new right and the family. Thanks for watching.